In today's episode, we discuss one of the most prevalent coaster models of all time, one that you likely know from back to front. Welcome to Airtime Traveler. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Roller Coaster History Podcast. You are listening to Airtime Traveler. My name is Nathan Grace, and I'm joined by my wife and lovely co-host.
Hey, I'm Haley.
And thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If this is your first time listening to the podcast here at Airtime Traveler, essentially every week we take one roller coaster and we dive into the history of that roller coaster. So I am a coaster enthusiast and have been for a long time.
You're a coaster nerd.
Well, that is not as professional way of putting it. I think that's why we prefer to be called enthusiasts, because it sounds more professional than what a nerd.
You are a nerd.
I'm a nerd for other reasons, though. So I'm a coaster enthusiast, have been for a long time, and my wife Haley is a member of the GP, or the general public.
Yep.
So I'm here to do the research and tell the stories, and she is here to make me more interesting, as is the case in our everyday life as well. So
yeah, pretty much.
You're not supposed to agree with that, but okay.
I don't know. You make life pretty interesting. Nathan is the king of dad jokes.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe we'll throw in a dad joke here and there.
I feel like we probably have.
We probably have.
To be honest, though, our toddler's the one that makes things interesting lately.
That's true. That's true. Today, he seriously
Today
had
especially.
so much energy. I told Nathan when I got home, I was like, he has the energy of 5 golden retrievers. Like,
he was electric today.
Bouncing off the walls. I'm like, where did he get this energy from?
Oh, man.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? He's delirious.
Be sure to go and follow along. So you can go and follow us on social media. We're on Instagram and Twitter. And if you go and follow us now, you can actually kind of follow along as we go throughout the episode. You can see pictures and videos that I might post that I will be showing Haley as we go throughout today's episode, but you can kind of follow along and see what we're talking about.
They're definitely worth it. The pictures are very cool to look at.
So if you go on Twitter, you'll be able to see pretty much everything I show her. Instagram, I'm limited to 10 pictures that I will put in collages so I can get a few more pictures in there. You won't be able to see everything, though. So if you want to see everything, go to Twitter. If you're okay seeing just most of it, go to Instagram. So our handle is just at Airtime Traveler for both of those. And be sure to follow the podcast and leave a 5-star review. It really helps people find us in the future, and I know a few of you have done that already. We really appreciate it. So,
yeah.
As far as news or any updates, I don't think there's really anything to talk about.
Weird.
Yeah,
we looked at the stats today of the podcast, and
we're
really grateful for you, those who have listened to episodes before and continue to listen. Like, we've grown so much, and it's been more of a hobby for us, but having people that actually listen to us just kind of gives us motivation to keep going. So
yeah, I was looking at some of our statistics today, and we have 6 times as many listeners. So looking at April 2023 versus 2022, we had 6 times as many listeners during the month of April as we did last year. So, which is, last April is when we started, so that kind of makes sense. But, just really appreciate all of you that have continued to tune in to the podcast to hear these stories. And, it's been a lot of fun, and we hope to do this for years to come, as long as we keep enjoying it and you guys keep listening. Might as well, right? So,
you're like the mouthpiece of these coasters and telling their story. And
I like to think, and I know if you haven't listened to our very first few episodes, the whole reason we started this podcast was because I was looking for something that would tell not just a generic history of the roller coaster. I wanted to learn more about the kind of exactly what we do. I wanted to learn I knew every roller coaster has several years worth of development, right? So certainly you can put together an hour's worth of history.
Yeah.
But there wasn't really anything like that. I mean, you could go on YouTube and you could get like 15 to 30 minute histories on some of the really popular coasters. But like, we've covered some pretty obscure coasters that there's like not really anything to look at on YouTube. And so, that's kind of what gave me the idea to do this in the first place. And so I hope that's for you that have been listening to the podcast. I hope that's why you've enjoyed it so much, is because it's something that no one else is really doing. And
right. I think something that I enjoy especially is when you do coasters that are more near and dear to my heart, like things like Kennywood or Disney World, or even Silver Dollar City, that are more coasters that we love going on constantly, and are more closer to home, or our favorite place to go, and it's more closer to home and whatever, and your heart and whatever. I like that. I like that we're able to learn the history behind it all and stuff. So.
Well, it's fun to go from park to park, just because wherever you may be tuning in, you may live in the Cleveland area, and we talk about a Cedar Point coaster, and that's something that you're excited to listen to, to learn about. Or you may live in Washington D.C. and we talk about something from King's Dominion. And so just wherever you are, we hope to kind of there's parks we haven't been to, and there'll be some more parks we're adding to that list this year to kind of expand our horizons and talk about more and more coasters. So hopefully you're finding something in the podcast you really enjoy. And if you are, be sure to share it with other people you think might be interested. If people that enjoy learning about, we've tried to market this as something that anybody can enjoy, because from the GP perspective, from Haley's perspective, there's still things like customer reviews and ridiculous newspaper articles and things that are still funny and interesting for people that aren't necessarily diving into the coaster industry every single day. But then I hope the enthusiasts of you that are listening also find a lot of interesting stuff, and hopefully learning some stuff about these coasters that you've never heard before, which is what happens for me, as an enthusiast. As I'm doing the research for these, I'm always learning new stuff that I find fascinating. So
I know I'm really excited to go to Dollywood next week.
So that is a good point. So the day, if you're listening to this, the day this episode releases, I am actually at Dollywood today. We will have been to Dollywood yesterday, Wednesday, and then today, Thursday, I'm going for a second day. It's our first time ever at Dollywood, so picking up some new credits, and
you are.
I'm picking up some new credits.
So if you've missed a couple of the past episodes, I'm pregnant, so riding these coasters this season is going to be kind of out of the question for me. So I'm going to be more observing and just more taking my kid on the kiddie things and eating the food. So I'll definitely have some remarks about the food.
But we keep an eye out, probably a week or two after we get back from this trip, you'll see a Dollywood trip report that we'll release. And I know those have been popular with you guys, as just kind of hearing our thoughts on these parks as we go to them. So be sure to follow the podcast. That way you'll be alerted to whenever those release, because these episodes are a time traveler on a scheduled basis, but those trip reports will just happen kind of when we have time. So if you follow the podcast, you'll just be alerted whenever those go live. So
sounds good.
Well, let's jump into today's discussion. Now, this will be the second time we've done something like this. In season 1, we talked about a specific coaster model. We talked about the Reverchon spinning coaster. We're going to do that again today with another coaster model that has been cloned so many times. And so you can't just pick one coaster to talk about. They're all the same, so you might as well group them all into one episode. So we're going to be talking about the Vekoma Boomerang today. Now, do you know what these are? Do you know what the Vekoma Boomerang is?
I've seen the Boomerang coasters. The Jolly Rancher is one, isn't it?
Okay, yep. So that's exactly what it is. So any Boomerang coaster, pretty much, I won't say 100%, but 99% of the Boomerang coasters in the U.S. are built by Vekoma.
Right, they have one at Kings Island?
So they have a version of one at Kings Island.
Okay.
It was, because that one was an inverted version.
Right.
So the ones, I'm trying to think the ones you'd be familiar with. So that one at Kings Island is in Vertigo. And then you mentioned, like you said, Jolly Rancher Remix at Hershey Park.
Right.
Man, I don't know that there's any others you'd really be familiar with. There's one at Carowinds that I rode, but you weren't with me when I went to Carowinds. But
was there one at Knott's?
There was one at Knott's. We'll talk about that one later at the episode, but there was one at Knott's. I'm trying to remember if Six Flags, because I know you went to Six Flags over Georgia when you were younger. I'm trying to think if they had one or have one. I can't remember off the top of my head. We will talk about Six Flags over Georgia later in the episode, and I'll be curious to see if any of what we talk about sounds familiar to you, but we'll get to that in a second. So the first Vekoma Boomerang would open in 1984. It's been estimated, it's kind of complicated because there's like the base Boomerang, which was the first one that they introduced, and then they've kind of introduced some variants over time.
Right.
So the base one, there's been approximately 53 of them that have been constructed in the world. So yeah, and part of why that is because one, it's pretty inexpensive for what it is.
Okay.
And two, like when you can clone a ride and put it in like a small plot of land, like that becomes really appealing for parks that are looking for a high thrill roller coaster but don't want to spend a ton of money. Because they're approximately, I couldn't get a solidified number on this, but I'm going to say they're between $3 to $5 million.
Okay.
Which for a roller coaster, a steel roller coaster, not that much.
Right.
You know, we've talked about coasters in the 10, 20, 30 million, or last week we talked about a $500 million coaster. So, you know, 3 to 5 million is certainly not, you know, that's much more affordable for smaller parks. They're 935 feet long. You do traverse that twice because you go forwards and then backwards.
Right.
120 feet tall and a top speed of 47 miles per hour. So, in the U.S., the 5 highest rated ones in the CoasterBot rankings. So at 130 is Aftershock, which is at Silverwood in Idaho.
Really?
Yep, and we'll talk about why that one's rated so high compared to some of the others. In Vertigo at Kings Island is rated at 280. Sea Serpent at Maury's Piers at 337. Flying Cobras at Carowinds at 351. And Jolly Rancher Remix at Hershey Park at 364. So those are the 5 highest rated boomerang coasters in the country. Obviously, there's many, many more, but we're not going to... If we tried to talk about the history of each individual Vekoma Boomerang, we would be here all night. Kind of my goal for today is to talk about the ones that kind of started, like the first few of each variant, and also any that may have like an interesting, like super weird history, or like they did something totally different with it. Just any that stand out to me. So... first of all, we can't review the names, but we can't review a name like we do usually, but we can look at a review of all the different names that have been used for these 53 boomerangs.
Okay.
So these are the names that have been used more than once, because there's some like Flying Cobras and Jolly Rancher Remix, obviously only been used one time.
Yeah.
So 2 of them have been called Zoomerang.
It's a boomafoo.
Is
It's what I say.
that what reminds you of?
Yes,
This is what came to mind first.
Boomafoo.
That is a blast from the past. My gosh.
I love that monkey.
This is a lemur, not a monkey.
Sorry. He's so cute.
2 of them are called Boomerang Coast to Coaster, which is a mouthful.
Blah, 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 blah.
$5 if you can guess which park chain that comes from.
Six Flags.
It's totally Six Flags.
Come on, Six Flags. You gotta be more creative.
3 of them are called Cobra. Okay, that's fine. I mean, the Cobra roll, I mean, it's named after the way that it looks like a cobra, so, I mean, you know, makes sense. 3 of them are called Flashback. That's a solid name. I mean, yeah, it makes sense.
All right.
3 of them are called Recoil. Kind of an interesting name. It's kind of unique. I think all 3 of them are in Europe. I don't think that name would go over as well in the U.S.
Okay.
8 of them are called Stress Express. which, funny enough, was my nickname.
8?
What? Yeah, 8 of them.
8 of them.
8 of them are called Stress Express,
Why?
which, funny enough, was my nickname in college. But I think all of...
I didn't do that.
No, that wasn't actually my name in
Oh
college.
my gosh, Nate. No.
No, I think all of
What are you
the...
talking about?
When I saw that, I was like, Stress Express, all of them are in Asia, so I don't know if that's just getting translated weird and maybe it means something else over there, but anyway, 8 of them, Stress Express. And then, of course, 29 of them are just called Boomerang.
That's better than Zoomerang.
Very clever. You prefer Boomerang over Zoomerang?
Yeah, I just think of Zaboomafoo. I don't know.
Zaboomafoomerang?
Can this be a thing? That should be its mascot, but Zaboomafoo.
Okay, what this reminds me of is the Wild Adventures Park, because I think one of the Zoomerangs is down at Wild Adventures, which is...
It's perfect!
Well, so it's because that park is like a amusement park zoo kind of hybrid.
Yeah.
So you should totally work with, I think it was was it PBS that Zaboomafoo?
Yeah.
Work with PBS and get a license for Zaboomafoo.
I'm down. Let's do
I don't
this.
think nobody going.
Zaboomafoo.
I don't think that's really a draw for people anymore.
Zaboomafoo Zoomerang. I think this is a great idea.
Oh, man. Here's a few park descriptions. Here's the description for Flying Cobras at Carowinds. This coaster sends riders through a 360-degree loop, as well as a cobra roll at speeds up to 50 miles an hour. Just as these thrill seekers catch their breath, fly through the entire ride again, but this time backwards. Okay, yeah, sounds about right.
Monologue voice. Oh my gosh.
Here's a sea serpent at Maury's Piers.
Number 2.
Well, this has a totally different tone to it.
All right.
The Slytherin coaster. That's right on the website. The high looping sea serpent takes you through...
Come on, you gotta do this better.
This one feels more like a football answer. The high looping sea serpent takes you through not 1, but 2 120-foot hills, upside down not twice, but 3 times.
Nathan, you're
Is
in the
that
wrong
not
career.
enough? No, good, because the sea serpent snakes back and takes you through the ride again in reverse.
Oh my gosh.
Also, this one says it's 55 miles an hour, which is 8 miles per hour faster than it actually... I don't know, none of these parks agree on how fast it goes. Like, 47 is from the manufacturer, but you'll notice Carowinds... Oh, wait, let me go back to Carowinds here. What did Carowinds say? Yeah, Carowinds says 50 miles per hour. Maury's Piers said 55. And then here, Hershey Park says 47, which actually matches what the manufacturer says. So it was very strange.
We're rounding up.
I mean, I guess 55. That's a big.
Lot.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Here's for Jolly Rancher Remix. The Hershey Park skyline just got brighter with Jolly Rancher Remix attraction. This reimagined coaster takes you and your senses forward and back on the same flavorful track. Blast through the flavor tunnel, invert 6 times in 90 seconds, and jam to sweet tunes. The best part, each ride is different. There you go. So, there's some descriptions. Of course, our favorite part. Let's get into some customer reviews. I grabbed a bunch of reviews from a bunch of different ones just because some of these are just great. Here's one for Flying Cobras. 3 stars. Well, just got off. My seatbelt came undone, but a fun ride other than thinking I might fall out and die. I don't know how much to trust these reviews that say, like, it came undone. Because they, like... I don't know, like if that was happening on a regular basis, like clearly the health and safety department would be shutting these things down. So I don't know. I feel like some of these people think that's what's happening, but it's just not as tight as they want it to be. Right. I don't know. It's very strange. Here's for the Sea Serpent at Maury's Piers. 5 stars. Real fun. Goes through a couple times, but bro, it's worth it. All right then.
I feel like that was my brother. Just changed his last name.
Here's for Jolly Rancher Remix. 1 star. In theory, this should be a fun ride. It looks cool and is brand new and very inviting to the eyes. And then you get on it. I've done many boomerangs and coasters taller and faster than this one, but it seems the goal here is to get you dizzy to the point of passing out. And then you do it backwards. I was fine 5 to 10 minutes after getting off, My wife went on with my daughter, and she had a migraine the rest of the day. I'm sure people a lot will love it, and a lot people will hate it. For me, worst coaster I've ever been on. Wow, that is quite the insult.
I mean, yeah, but you like got really sick on Remix.
Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit about Jolly Rancher Remix when we'll talk a little bit more about it later in the episode.
I walked past that and I was not excited.
Here's another one for Remix. 1 star. What an awful ride. I don't usually get sick on rides, but after doing Laugh Track, which made me a little nauseous, but not too bad, this was completely awful. First of all, never do Laugh Track and Jolly Rancher Remix back to back. That's a terrible idea.
And then going backwards. That's not a good idea.
Going backwards and upside down multiple times gave me car sickness for a couple days. I think you need to go to a doctor if you have car sickness that lasts a couple days.
More like whiplash, dear.
I was even getting nauseous at the 4D show at HCW a few hours later. Great park, awful ride.
Yeah, go to the doctor.
There was 3 people in a row that left a 1-star review because it was closed.
Of course. Sounds like...
Here's another one for Remix. 2 stars. Ugh, a boomerang at an otherwise perfect park.
Okay.
Just as if they were offended that Hershey Park would even think to add a boomerang.
How dare they?
5 stars. Hershey Park, Hershey, Pennsylvania is outstanding. If you ever tasted a Jolly Rancher, it's amazing no matter the flavor. So is the Jolly Rancher Remix ride. They have a ride ready for any size rider. Well, not any size.
No, there's a size.
Walk into
Parker on that.
Walk into Hershey Park. Enter the time of your life. Ride on.
This doesn't sound like a...
No, it's kind of a review for the ride, but also for the park. Oh, it's very strange.
Very confusing.
Here's some for Vertigo at Kings Island. 1 star. I and my husband thought we were going to fall out the entire ride. The shoulder harness is extremely loose and there is no seat lap belts. We are ACE members and we love roller coasters, but Vertigo is an awful ride. Vertigo has a huge gap in the back of its seats. Horrible rough ride, too. This ride needs new seats and some WD-40 on the track. This ride needs to go away or renovated. Kings Island needs some real rides like Cedar Point or Dollywood. So most of that, I'm kind of like, first of all, it's strange that they mention they're ACE members, which suggests that they actually know what they're kind of talking about here.
Right.
So I'm not sure why they felt like the restraints were loose. I don't know. It was very strange. The one thing about this review that really caught my eye, though, was like they're ACE members, but then they're like, Kings Island needs some real rides like Cedar Point. I'm like, Kings Island has some great rides. Yeah. What do you like? You got Orion and Diamondback and Mystic Timbers and the Beast. Like, I could go on. And Banshee. Like, there's so many great rides at Kings Island. So it's a weird thing for an ACE member to be saying. Here's another one. 1 star. Singles will be paired. And instead of telling you that when you ask to sit alone, they just sneak someone with you. No other ride had this problem.
It's like, blind dating.
I just like the phrase, they sneak someone with you.
Yeah, it's like
as if they're like, okay, go. Like, just sneak someone right there and like, oh, sorry, you guys are sitting next to you.
It's like blind and speed dating, put together.
Well, that ride's interesting because the seats actually face each other. They alternate. So you'll actually be looking at somebody across from you.
It's like speed dating.
There you go. It's a speed dating coaster.
Yeah.
One more here. Of course, every time we have a review like this, very classic. Here's for Aftershock at Silverwood. 3 stars. I drive by that place on my way to work and home again daily. I hear it's great, but wouldn't know myself.
What kind of review?
Every time.
No way.
Without,
this is the best one so far.
Hasn't even gone into the park.
He drives by it and feels the need to get on his computer and leave a review.
I don't get it. Some people just...
What the heck?
It's their joy in life, apparently.
I like how he's left 41 reviews.
He's left a lot of reviews.
With 5 photos.
That kind of makes me want to look at his other reviews and see if all 41 are things he's never done.
That looks cool.
He just went on a road trip and reviewed all the things he passed. Oh, goodness.
He's living the
there
life
you go.
right there.
There's our introduction to Vekoma Boomerangs. Let's talk about the history. So let's go back to 1979. All right, so
it's not that far back.
Not too far back. So in the mid 70s, we've talked a lot about aerodynamics and kind of their impact on the industry in the 50s through the early 2000s. And in the mid 70s, they were just dominating. Like everything that was breaking records. Aerodynamics was just the roller coaster manufacturer of the decade, and even more. And you could even argue after that too. But due to the popular demand that they were having, like they just couldn't handle all the projects that they were being asked to take. So around that time, they would contract Vekoma to handle the European market for them. So Vekoma opened in 1926 in the Netherlands as a farming equipment and coal mining machinery company. Here's a little Dutch history for you. They struggled in the late 60s after the Dutch government banned coal mining in 1965. So, didn't think you thought we'd talk about Dutch coal mining today.
It's banned.
Well, I think it was causing, because coal mining is terrible for your health. Like people, it's like even if you...
I don't know if you knew, but my Uncle Matt used to be a coal miner.
Really? That is tough work. And I mean, nowadays, like if you're doing it nowadays, they have the technology to make it like safe for people. But back in the 60s, oh, forget about it. That's why like black lung was a thing. Like people were just, it's terrible. So after that, Vekoma would produce steel pipes for the petrochemical industry for several years before finally winning the manufacturing contract from Aerodynamics. So over a few months, Aero basically taught Vekoma how to build their roller coasters. Like they gave them all the specs and taught them how to do all the different pieces of it. And like they understood metalworking because they'd been doing metalworking for 50 years at this point. But to do metalworking specifically for roller coasters is different than doing it for pipes or farming equipment, So they teach them basically how that works. And starting in 1979, Vekoma would construct all of Aerodynamics roller coasters in the European market, while Aero would manage North and South America and Asia. So that's kind of how it worked.
Got it.
So you'll see a lot of roller coasters in Europe that look like Aerodynamics corkscrew coasters, but they're actually built by Vekoma. So it's kind of a weird thing. Like this looks just like corkscrew at Cedar Point. Like it looks like it's the same model, but it's actually built by Vekoma. Kind of a strange thing. So, and they actually, this one here, this is kind of unrelated, but this is corkscrew at Alton Towers, which no longer exists. But they actually took that roller coaster and they turned it into a design piece for the front of the park. Which is really cool. So this is like the entrance to the park here, and the double corkscrew from the ride. When they tore it out, they just took that and repainted it, and now it sits at the front of the park. It's cool. Like a tribute to the old ride. So that's pretty cool. Kind of unrelated, but Vekoma did build that roller coaster, and I think actually if you go to like this little fencing area here, I think they have the original plaque with like the Vekoma logo and everything.
Oh, cool.
So from 1979 to 1983, Vekoma constructed 15 coasters in Europe and one in Canada for some reason. I don't know what that was. I guess they had the Canadian market too. I don't know. It's very strange.
Or French Canadian.
I guess. Now, because of all this, Vekoma kind of gains some confidence in their own ability to do roller coasters, and they kind of make the decision to enter the U.S. market, not as a partner with Aero, though, like as a competitor with Aero. They're kind of like, we can do this on our own. Like, we have a few years of experience under our belts, and they had a coaster design in mind that they wanted to introduce. So they wanted to revamp the shuttle coaster. Now, do you know what that means?
Not really.
So basically, a shuttle coaster is anything that is not like a closed circuit. So I'm trying to think if we've been on, other than Boomerangs, if we've been on anything that's a shuttle coaster. I I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. The best way to describe it is kind of like, well, actually, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. You remember the Mr. Freeze reverse blast coaster, Six Flags St. Louis, that we were talking about yesterday? Mm-hmm. That one's a shuttle coaster. So it launches out backwards, it does this whole thing, and then it goes into a spike, and then it goes back and it finishes the course backwards. So the circuit is actually, you know, there's two separate ends. It doesn't actually make a complete circuit, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So that's a shuttle coaster. So they started, the earliest roller coasters were shuttle coasters. So like switchback railways in the 1880s, basically there would be like two towers on either end, and like the car would just go from one tower to the other, and then they would have to like lift it up and put it on the track, and then it would go back the other way. And it was just all gravity based, right? You know, I don't even think there were chain lifts or anything. Like, it was just all manual. But that's, you know, that was early roller coasters. And then in the 1970s is really when shuttle coasters started taking off, with like these, the Schwarzkopf and Arrow launch coasters. So like Montezuma's Revenge at Knott's Berry Farm, which basically launches, goes into a loop, into a spike, and then it does the whole thing backwards. And then the Arrow ones are similar, except the Arrow ones launch you out of a station, you go down a drop into a loop, and then you go up a hill, and then it kind of levels out, and then it pushes you backwards, and then you do the course backwards. So similar concepts, but they are slightly different.
Got it.
So at that point, Vekoma's first coaster model that they would offer is our topic for today, which would be the Boomerang coaster, which was designed by... I don't speak Dutch, so I'm going to say it's Peter Clare or Peter Clerks. I'm going to say it's Clare. Anyway, it's Clerx. I don't know how you pronounce that in Dutch, but... So he was the designer for the Vekoma Boomerang. The ride experience for Vekoma Boomerangs is as follows. Ride begins when the train is pulled backwards from the station and up the first lift hill by a catch car. After being released, the train passes through the station and enters a cobra roll element, and then travels through a vertical loop. After being pulled up a second lift hill, the train is released to head backwards through each inversion once again, making the total number of inversions per ride 6. Mm-hmm. The train slows down as it passes through the station backwards, and then comes to a complete stop in the station.
I've already told you, my limit is 5.
Your limit is 5.
I don't think I could do 6.
Well, and Boomerangs would be tough for you because you're doing 3 of those inversions while also going backwards. It's pretty disorienting, and they even, for me, that, you know, I've been on, you know, over 100 roller coasters at this point, and the Boomerangs are still some of the most nauseating for me. So... But the coaster model was groundbreaking in several ways. It was the first shuttle coaster that featured a lift hill rather than a launch. It featured 3 times as many inversions as other shuttle coasters. And technically, it broke the record for most inversions on a roller coaster, kind of, because you go upside down 6 times, but there's only 3 elements that go upside down. So that record was kind of in a gray area on whether it broke the record or not.
Right.
And then... those are kind of the main records it would break. But it would catch on like wildfire, like, because it was a major thrill attraction, but it was also relatively inexpensive and very compact.
All right, we talked about this.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this when we started. It was really enticing to smaller parks that wanted to add their first big roller coaster, right?
Right.
So the first Boomerang would open in 1984 at Rafaela Padilla in Mexico. There is some discrepancy on whether this one was the first one it was definitely the first one constructed, but it's kind of iffy on whether it was the first one to open. It's kind of, not documented entirely. It was called Boomerang. It remained at the park for 2 years until the park closed down. The coaster was then sent to what is now known as Six Flags Mexico, where it continues to operate to this day, actually. So here's a picture from its first home at Rafaela Padilla. And then here's modern day where it sits at Six Flags Mexico.
Nice.
Still known as Boomerang.
I like the paint job, though.
Yeah, nice paint job. The purple with the green supports there. So there would be 3 others that would open the same year. So there would be Boomerang. There's so many European parks I'm going to have to try to pronounce names today. Boomerang at... this is Belgium now. Bellewaerde Park in Belgium. This is the one that some say opened first, but wasn't constructed first. The other ones would be Boomerang at La Ronde in Canada and Sea Serpent at Maury's Piers in New Jersey. I think I didn't actually check on which. So this one in Belgium still operates. I think the one at La Ronde is closed, but then I know Sea Serpent and Maury's Piers still operate. So pretty impressive that they're still operating today. Cool. And this is actually the highest rated normal boomerang in the U.S. And we'll talk about the variants later, but I think the reason for that is one, it has the new vest restraints, which we'll talk about later. And two, this is on a New Jersey pier park, so it's right on the water. It's right on the beach, pretty. So you get some really nice views. And Maury's Piers is kind of notorious for being really good at maintaining their roller coasters, because they also have a Vekoma SLC there, which is also notorious for being really rough, but everyone actually says that theirs is the best one they've ever been on. So Maury's Piers takes really good care of their roller coasters, so I think that plays a part into why that one's rated so highly. So let's talk about some of the more popular ones that have been built over the years. So there's this one, which was called Missile, opened at American Adventure in 1989. American Adventure actually is in the UK. So I think it was like a UK park that was meant to be like, this is what America is all about. So I don't know, it's kind of it's an interesting concept, because you think here, like, we do the same thing, right? We have like, you go to Epcot and you get to experience France and Italy and the UK. Well, over there, they're kind of doing the same thing. They're like, this is an American-themed park. So
interesting.
It was opened by Buzz Aldrin, of all people, which is kind of funny. It's basically, I guess must have been space-themed. So they're like, oh, we have an astronaut open the roller coaster for us. So anyway, there's Boomerang at Knott's, which we talked about at the beginning of the episode. It's not there anymore. It's probably one of the most ridden boomerangs of all time, though, because it was there for a long time. Opened in 1990, closed in 2017. It actually replaced Corkscrew, which that Corkscrew was the first roller coaster to go upside down in the modern day. So there's kind of some sore feelings about a Vekoma Boomerang replacing such a legendary attraction. It's kind of like, Knott's, why didn't you keep the first inverting coaster? But it is what it is now. So.
Right.
This has now since been replaced by Hang Time. This is where Hang Time sits nowadays.
Got it. Would you like Hang Time?
I very much liked Hang Time. More than I would have liked this, certainly. Flying Cobras at Carowinds, which we talked about, originally opened at Geauga Lake, which, remember, we talked about Geauga Lake in our Dominator episode. Well, when Geauga Lake closed, they sent this to Carowinds. That was in 2009. Also a very good boomerang, also has the vest restraints, and a good theme too. Like the Flying Cobras is actually themed to aviation. It's not the snake. It's themed to, like, I think that's like a group in the Air Force is the Flying Cobras, or maybe it was a group back in. You can tell I'm not a military expert. But it's based on aviation, and so that's like, you've got the.
You need to ask your brother-in-law about
each
it.
of these cars each of these cars is painted a different color and has a different pilot associated with it.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is really cool, and like you've got like the red and white checkers and you can see there's like a plane here. So they did a good job putting a little theme on it, which for Charlotte and like aviation and Charlotte are just kind of they go hand in hand. So it's perfect for the park. So they did a good job with it. Let's see, there's Speed of Sound at Wallaby Holland, which has onboard music. That's and cool. Also has this light tunnel on the lift hill, which is kind of cool. It's also interesting because they closed it in 2007, and then it sat there for 4 years. So people are like, are they going to get rid of it?
Weird.
And then finally in 2011, they actually revamped it and reopened it, which is the version that we have nowadays. There was Flashback at Six Flags, or there is Flashback at Six Flags New England, opened in 2000, was one of two boomerangs that were right next to each other in the same park. We'll talk about that later. That's a weird story. And then there's Boomerang Hypercoaster in Indonesia, which is built on top of a building.
What?
which is really cool. Like, just to drive by and see this roller coaster on top of a building.
That's crazy.
And even crazier, this is the Boomerang from Knott's Berry Farm. When they got rid of it and sold it, these people in Indonesia bought it and put it on top of a building.
Oh, okay.
That is crazy. What a way for that coaster to continue to be a legend in the industry. And then probably the most unique Vekoma Boomerang is, of course, Jolly Rancher Remix.
Yeah.
So formerly Sidewinder, opened in 1991 and then underwent a major overhaul last year, actually. And so it was kind of following a recent trend in candy-themed attractions at Hershey. They took an old coaster and revamped it into this brand new experience, which I think was brilliant on their part. Like, they certainly didn't spend as much on this as they would to build a brand new roller coaster, but managed to, I mean, I wouldn't call this a headline attraction, but it definitely made it more popular than it was before.
Right.
Passengers enter the train where the virtual DJ, host of the roller coaster, announces the ride's name, initiating the Jolly Rancher design lights to flicker the 5 candy colors above passengers in the station. Once a color is selected, the host announces the flavor, beginning the ride cycle. Each flavor has a specific song associated with it. The park also added a tunnel between the Cobra Roll and the vertical loop that features colored lights and the scent of the selected flavor that is pumped in. So, personally, I only got to ride it one time and I got cherry. And like that fake cherry scent, I think is what made me nauseous.
Children's Tylenol.
But I also forgot to wear my motion sickness bands. So I'm like, I don't know which one of those two made me so sick, but I had to take like 30 minutes afterwards to
You did. I remember
get back into a good headspace before we went on something else. So
I think even then we still went on something more chill.
Yeah. So for fun, the 5 songs that it has: Grape plays a rock soundtrack, Blue Raspberries hip hop, Green Apple is EDM, Watermelon is dance, and Cherry is acoustic pop. They also have, I didn't know this, but they have holiday layovers for Halloween and Christmas too.
Oh, so, fun.
Yeah, so that's kind of fun. Also opened in conjunction with a brand new Zamperla Nebula's flat ride that is situated in between the 2 half loops of the Cobra Roll. So you have kind of like this whole little Jolly Rancher themed area between those 2 rides. So there's kind of a brief overview of the base model. Let's talk about some of the expansions, the variations of the model that happened over the years. So in 1997, Vekoma would introduce the inverted boomerang, also known as the Invertigo model. It was essentially the same layout, but with inverted trains instead of sit-down trains. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
The seats face forward and backward. So like you kind of sit back to back with people as you go down the train. So you can either start the ride forward and then go backward, or vice versa. So the layout was almost identical, as you can kind of see here. So here's the first Invertigo model that would open. This was Hangover at Liseberg in Sweden. Here's a show. This is showing the 2 different layouts. You can see really the only difference is on the original layout, the loop goes, it's a left-facing loop. Like when you go up, you go slightly left and then, finish the loop that direction. Whereas the loops on the Invertigo models actually go the other direction. They go from left to right. So,
Got it. Okay.
But other than that, it's basically identical, just you're inverted. So only 4 were ever constructed, though. So there was this one that we just talked about. The other 3 were Invertigo at California's Great America, which eventually went to Dorney Park. And then I think it was demolished after that. When I think it closed in 2017. There's Invertigo at Kings Island, which is the one we discussed earlier, which I've been on this one. And then the other one was Two-Face at Six Flags America. Themed to, this is actually a really cool name. I got to give props to Six Flags on this one, because you were facing each other, right? Well, Two-Face is a Batman villain that was in a movie around that time, so they named it Two-Face to coincide with the movie. I was like, that's a pretty smart name for Six Flags, so kudos to you. It's no longer at the park. It currently operates as Diabolic at Movieland Park in Italy. So that's the Invertigo model. Not a whole lot to talk about there. However, we've got the giant inverted boomerang to talk about next, and there's a lot of history with this one and crazy stories. So in the early 2000s, Six Flags wanted to work with Vekoma to develop a larger version of the Invertigo model. It seems like they probably bought this one in 1999, right?
Yeah.
So then in 2000, they kind of worked with Vekoma and was like, could we do something bigger? Like, how much bigger can we make this? So,
bigger and better.
So known as the giant inverted boomerang, the model would feature a few differences. So it's 270 feet longer. It's 60 feet taller, so it's almost 200 feet tall. 15 miles per hour faster. Rather than doing the seating where you were facing back to back, they actually did 4 across staggered seating. So you'd have like 2 and then like kind of 2 behind them like this. And then the lift hills would be vertical instead of inclined. You can see that in this picture, how the lift hills were vertical. So that's cool. And then the track would cross over itself with the 102-foot tall vertical 102-foot tall vertical loop situated directly over the station. So here you go. So here, those are the 2 we were looking at earlier. This is the layout for the giant inverted boomerang. So you can see they would go up this, vertical lift, and then they would go through the Cobra roll, and then the loop would actually go up and above the station. So you can kind of see that here in this picture. And then go into the other vertical spike, and then, do the whole thing backwards. So,
interesting.
Yep. Six Flags purchased 3 of these for the 2001 season. So this is Deja Vu at Six Flags Magic Mountain, and Deja Vu at Six Flags Over Georgia, and Deja Vu at Six Flags Great America.
Great names.
Very, very clever. Deja Vu's not a bad name.
No,
It's actually a good name, but they couldn't come up with something different for each part.
Over the summer.
Well, and they're all the same color, same paint scheme.
Yeah.
Like they're just.
I feel like Six Flags just does that a lot. Copycat.
It's very much so. You are learning. That is the Six Flags way. Every Six Flags park has a Batman the Ride.
I'm an enthusiast too. I won't be able to be a GP much longer.
That would ruin it. This is an amazing newspaper article. This is ridiculous. You ready for this?
Okay.
Someone at Six Flags had fun writing this. We'll just put it in that. This is for Six Flags Great America's announcement, which actually they said Six Flags Great America was basically like, I think it was for the 25th anniversary. I don't see it in here. I think it was their 25th anniversary. They said they were going to add 2 new roller coasters for their 25th anniversary. So people are like, that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
So here's the announcement. Six Flags Great America stunned the theme park world today by unveiling plans to erect an unprecedented 2 new monster roller coasters that promise to stretch the limits of thrills for the 2001 season. Today's announcement is record-breaking and history-making for Six Flags Great America, said Jim Wintrode, Vice President and General Manager. Never before has Six Flags Great America added 2 world-class roller coasters in the same season. The introduction of these rides thrust the park's coaster count to an astounding 12, launching the park into the stratosphere of thrill parks. Wow. Let me just toot my own horn for a little bit. The worst part about this was it was 2 shuttle coasters. It was the giant inverted. It was Deja Vu, the giant inverted boomerang we were looking at, and it was an Intamin Impulse model, which the Intamin Impulses are 2 spikes and a launch station, and that was it. One of the spikes is spiral, so like it's a good coaster, but to go in here and be like 2 monster roller coasters, it's 2 inverted shuttle coasters. Like, get over yourself. Oh, anyway, and then this is I don't even want to read this, but this is just a weird thing that I can't leave out. What is it? Complimenting V2. V2 was the name of the impulse coaster. It was vertical velocity, but they nicknamed it V2. Okay. Complimenting V2 is yet another powerhouse thrill machine, Deja Vu, the first of its kind in the world, except there were 2 others being built and 2 other parks. Deja Vu is a twin thrill machine with tight pulsating curves and inclines that will turn the heads of even the most avid thrill seeker. What is that sentence?
I'm uncomfortable.
I know.
I'm uncomfortable reading that.
I'm not going to read it again.
Please don't. You know what? Let's just skip this.
I read that and I was like, what? Who describes a coaster that way?
This article is strange.
It's very strange. I hate it. Let's move on.
Yeah,
let's move on.
Let's move on.
Okay. Now, these pictures are a little bit of a spoiler, but intended to open in spring of 2001, the rides were plagued with technical issues. And it's
plagued is a great word.
Plagued with technical issues. The worst part, people don't really, it's not really well known what the problem was. It's rumored that the trains were the problem, but it's not official. All three of them were supposed to open in the spring, but were delayed until August, September, and one of them, the Great America one, actually, the one with I'm not even going to say it, the curves, was delayed till October, which is basically right before the park closes for the year, because it's in Chicago. Ugh, terrible. Because of the severe mechanical issues, Six Flags refused to pay Vekoma until the coasters were operating properly. And Vekoma didn't have a great 2000 season, and so this refusal to pay sent Vekoma into bankruptcy in August of 2001. Under Dutch law, so here we go, we're going to talk about Dutch bankruptcy law.
Lots of Dutch history
I know.
Today.
This meant the company must close its doors and a team of 15 individuals would be appointed by the government to reorganize the company. That's kind of interesting how they handle that.
Yeah,
so
that's interesting.
Enthusiasts would praise the intensity of these new models. It had the maintenance and downtime would continue to be an issue, but people that got to ride it would say that they're actually really awesome. They're a lot of fun. 3 more would be constructed after that. Stuntfall in Spain, which also was technically a Six Flags purchase. But then the other 2 have been built in more recent years. There's a giant inverted boomerang in China called Giant Inverted Boomerang. And then there's one in Russia called Quantum Leap. The 3 Deja Vu coasters would all be moved and sold to other parks. In 2007, Six Flags Over Georgia sold their Deja Vu to a park in Brazil. The coaster never opened and is still in storage to this day.
Okay.
Which, here's pictures of it, and all dismantled just along the side of a road here.
Oh, nice.
It is rumored to open this year, though, so I don't know how they're going to manage that.
Interesting.
Now, I did want to ask, do you know what year you went to Six Flags Over Georgia?
I was 16.
You were 16, so you would have been...
I think...
So that would have been after...
I think I was 16.
Yeah, if you're... Yeah, you would have had to have been 11 or younger for this coaster to have been at Six Flags Over Georgia before
I was
you went.
16.
Okay, so this was long gone by the time you visited. That same year, Six Flags Great America sold their Deja Vu to Silverwood, where the coaster reopened as Aftershock and continues to operate. This is actually the #1 rated boomerang coaster in the whole world. Now, the reason for that is, I guess, when Silverwood bought this, they actually had Vekoma come in and change some of the things that were wrong. And also, RMC helped assist in the construction, which is really random. I mean, it's not totally random because RMC and Silverwood actually have a really good relationship because they're only 30 minutes apart from each other.
Okay.
So they do a lot of work together. RMC has done a lot of retracking work on their wooden coasters. And then this past year, they built a Stunt Pilot for them, which is a new single rail coaster there. So for RMC to help assist in construction, I guess is not completely shocking. But this, people say that Aftershock runs fantastic. The maintenance isn't a problem, downtime's not a problem. So it seems like just whatever Vekoma and RMC did fixed all the problems, and it just runs great nowadays. So
we need to work together more often.
Clearly. And then in 2011, this is a crazy story. Okay. 2011, Six Flags moved Magic Mountain's Deja Vu to Six Flags New England, where it reopened as Goliath. Again, Six Flags with unoriginal names. They renamed this, but named it something that's the same name as a dozen other Six Flags coasters at other parks. Like,
yeah,
they have like a list of like 12 names, and then they just recycle those with all the coasters in all their parks.
What do you want to name this one? Pull up the list.
Pull up the list, exactly.
You know?
Is there a Goliath in that park? No? Okay, that's the one.
That's good. That's good right there.
I don't get it. I don't understand. So unoriginal.
It's very unoriginal.
It's like they did the marketing research back in 1990 and was like, what are the coaster names that, you know, people are most interested in? And so when they did the research, they're like, Goliath is great, Batman the Ride is great, Joker is really popular, and they're like, cool, we are never going to change that ever. Like, we're just going to assume that that is the same forever and ever. Like, they do it occasionally. Like, I mean, they opened Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger at Six Flags Fiesta Texas last year. So, occasionally they step out of the, you know, out of their old ways. But anyway. So, this is the one I wanted to talk. I mentioned it in passing earlier. This was built right next to Aftershock, which was a regular Vekoma Boomerang. So, I mean, look at this picture. And this is an overhead view. You literally, not only did you have two Vekoma Boomerangs in the same park, but they were right next to each other.
Really
like,
weird.
Such a strange decision. Because they could have
like,
sent...
They're even, like, the same...
They're
not even, like, flipped. Like, it's
no,
like
they're
the
facing the same way.
Yeah,
they're the same orientation.
That's
like
strange.
The only thing that, I mean, they are obviously a different ride experience because one is inverted, they are different colors. And they're not both called Boomerang, I guess.
Could you imagine?
So, it's a very strange
Giant
decision.
Boomerang and Boomerang.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think the timing on this. Because I've been to Six Flags New England, but it was years ago. I think this happened after I had been there. So I didn't get to witness this insanity, but just a very strange decision. Now, when they did this, they actually replaced Goliath's trains with new trains that didn't have the staggered seating. It just had 4 in a row, which I guess it was kind of complicated and people still kind of struggle to figure out where they're supposed to sit with the staggered seating. So they're trying to make the boarding process faster, but they bought the trains from Premier Rides instead of Vekoma, which is very strange. And enthusiasts actually said that the trains that they put on it were absolute garbage and just headache-inducing, terrible rattle, and said it completely ruined the ride. Like, there are some people that loved Deja Vu at Six Flags Magic Mountain. So when they came to Six Flags New England, they're like, oh, I get to ride Deja Vu again. And then they rode it and they're like, what did they do? They ruined it. They ruined it. And so it operated for 7 seasons, and then Six Flags just finally decided to demolish it. And this was the leftovers, just pile of rubble. And so now you can see, there you go, the old Boomerang is still there, but the plot of land where Goliath stood is completely empty nowadays. So a lot of people actually say they should tear down Aftershock, and then they have a really big plot of land to do something brand new. So it's kind of an interesting idea.
That'd be a cool thing, yeah.
So that leaves Aftershock as the only giant inverted boomerang that remains in the United States. So then let's talk about a more recent model, the family boomerang.
We've talked about these before.
We have. We actually talked about it last week. It's kind of interesting. I didn't even do that on purpose, but when we looked at the Cosmic Rewind testing video from Vekoma's testing facility, they were testing it on one of these family boomerang models. So the design of these coasters is completely different from the others above. The only similarity is that it's a shuttle coaster that starts with a reverse lift hill. But other than that, I mean, basically it's meant to be much less intense, obviously. So it doesn't have any inversions. It just kind of focuses on turns and hills. The first of these was Accelerator at Drayton Manor in the United Kingdom. So you can kind of see how these are just... I mean, these look like a lot of fun, actually. So it just kind of has this lift hill, and then it kind of goes into these banked turns and these hills.
I feel
and
like
then
I
goes
could do that.
Yeah, you could totally do this. It goes into this spike, and then does the same thing backwards. But you don't go upside down at all. But it seems like it seems like a lot of fun for families, right? So this one is 643 feet long, 66 feet tall, and 37 miles per hour. So good stats for a family coaster, right? The model has been really, really successful for Vekoma, actually. Where those other two Boomerang variants, there's only been 6 built and 4 built. Well, this one, there was only 6 built between 2011 and 2016, but in the last few years, it's just spread like crazy. And they've built 21 of them since 2016, and they've got 9 more that are under construction right now.
United States?
Strangely enough, no, and we'll talk about that. The Boomerang the original Boomerang kind of plays into the interesting dynamic that we have between the United States and Vekoma. We'll talk about it. This one also has a variety of different layouts. Like you can do a custom layout with this one. So you can see like this one's got like really cool theming, and this one too is almost indoors. Like it's like, diving in and out of buildings with like this really cool rock work. So they've done a lot of really cool things with the family Boomerang that make it really interesting.
Yeah.
And then lastly, starting this year, Vekoma introduced the Super Boomerang model.
Wow. Which
this looks like a lot of fun. It's basically, it's kind of a hybrid between I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's a launch coaster instead of their typical lift hill. But it's taking the same concept of doing a shuttle coaster with custom layouts and putting that into a more thrilling aspect with, what is this? I think it's just 2 inversions, but then it has 2 vertical spikes as well. Some great airtime moments, it looks like. So looks like a lot of fun. There's one under construction in China right now. Depending on how well that one does, we may start seeing some of these pop up in the U.S. Because, it looks like a great, compact model. It basically stays kind of on top of itself the whole time, so it's a really narrow model that you could, fit in on the edge of your park or something like that.
Right.
Or like on a boardwalk, which is kind of how they're advertising it in this render that they've got here. So
I feel like you would have a heyday in China.
There is really the only thing that, because I'm like not familiar with like the culture and things, like I would be nervous to like travel and try to go all these different places. Like Europe, I feel, is more in line with our culture.
Yeah.
Not to say that's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying, like, I feel like European culture is closer to American culture. So I feel like I could get by in Europe, where Asia, I feel like the culture is very different, and I would worry about just trying to understand how to be like a tourist without being the super annoying person that doesn't know anything and is getting on the coasters wrong or eating the food wrong or like getting lost. Like I was just
being too tall.
But as far as like the coasters they have there's a lot of I think Europe is probably more on my bucket list than Asia is.
Right.
But, well, minus Japan, because Japan has some really cool stuff. But anyway. So that's all the different variants.
Worry even like, I wonder if like their weight limit would be different too. Because
I don't know.
Usually smaller, skinnier people than, a lot of people in America are.
Yeah,
so.
I don't know.
Huh.
It's kind of interesting.
Be interesting to know.
So that's all the different variants of boomerangs that Vekoma has built over the years. Just to talk a little bit about kind of the legacy that the boomerang has had in the amusement industry. So in the 80s and 90s, probably early 90s, the boomerangs were revolutionary and were really intense for that time period and brought thrills to parks that previously couldn't afford it. So it was a big deal.
Right.
And so a lot of parks were jumping on it, even big parks like Knott's Berry Farm, right? Like they were a big park by that point, but even they saw the value in a cheap roller coaster that could go upside down 6 times. Like people were all over that. As they've gotten older and older, though, they have kind of gotten a little rough. They started offering, we talked about briefly, they started offering new restraints. So these are the original trains that the early boomerangs in the 80s and 90s had. Later on, they updated to these trains, and then their new versions now have these really comfortable vest restraints.
Nice.
I consider them comfortable. Some enthusiasts would beg to differ.
Right.
It is what it is. So, but they also offer you to buy. Nowadays, you wouldn't buy this one anymore, but nowadays, if you have a boomerang that you want to buy new trains for, you can buy these new vest restraints, which Flying Cobras, Sea Serpent, Jolly Rancher Remix all have these new vest restraints. And I think Six Flags Fiesta Texas actually upgraded to these this year for their boomerang as well. So
nice.
Good stuff. As time went along, the boomerangs basically had two major issues. One, they were everywhere.
Right.
Like when you're building, I know I said 53 earlier, that's worldwide. I'm not sure how many of those are in the U.S. I would venture to guess it's probably 30 to 40 of those were in the U.S. It was a lot. And so like, they're literally everywhere. And they're now being outclassed as coasters become, bigger and faster and,
right.
more versions. This unfortunately kind of became Vekoma's reputation, especially because some of their other models were also having issues with headbanging and downtime. Company may have not survived if it wasn't due to their relationship with Disney, which, starting in 1992, Disney kind of shifted gears from aerodynamics to Vekoma as aerodynamics was kind of dying out. And since then, 60% of Disney's coasters have been built by Vekoma, and all but one of Disney World's coasters has been built by Vekoma since 1996. So they've gotten to work on some really big projects, specifically Cosmic Rewind, Expedition Everest, Rock and Roller Coaster, like some really big deals, and that's kind of helped keep the company in really good business.
Which it's funny that, they have a reputation for being like, rough, but like Guardians is one of the smoothest rides I've ever been on.
Well, they have a reputation for rough on the boomerangs. Well, actually, what you're saying is kind of interesting because Vekoma kind of became a joke among enthusiasts from like the early 2000s until probably like 5 years ago. And maybe even still today for some enthusiasts, but I just typed in Vekoma memes on Google, and like you can see, like I've got a bunch of different Vekoma memes.
Oh my gosh!
But one of these is like, look at this one, says old Vekoma in Disney parks versus old Vekoma in any other park. That's just because Disney has the money to really invest into making them nice. But you've even said Rock and Roller Coaster is getting kind of rough.
Yeah.
And it's it's over 20 years old, so. Like this one, realizing that the Vekoma at your park is being taken out. So it's kind of this joke among enthusiasts, but that's kind of slowly changing because Vekoma, and I'm on the train that says Vekoma is better than they get credit for, because in Europe they're one of the most popular manufacturers, and 7 of their top 10 rated coasters are in Europe. Like, so here's some of their really famous coasters. So this is Fly at, oh gosh, I didn't write these down. I don't remember. I think I'm not even going to guess. I can't remember which parks these are at. I'm sorry, I'm not a European enthusiast. I can't remember I remember the names of the coasters. I can't remember what their parks are at. I know. But this is Fly. This is probably their highest rated coaster. It's a launched flying coaster.
Oh, cool.
Which is really cool. And you can see it like dives in and out of like these old like buildings. It's like designed to be like you're going through an old city.
Okay, I would love that.
It's really cool. It's really cool. This is Conda. I think this is just a hyper coaster, but it has like some inversions and some really great airtime. Anyway, they're doing lots of great stuff in Europe, which is the other 3 that are not in the top 10 are that are US that are top 10 for Vekoma are Cosmic Rewind, Expedition Everest,
Disney
and
ones,
and Aftershock, which is that giant inverted boomerang that we were talking about earlier. So, but in the last couple years, American parks are finally, I think that reputation is starting to go away. Like the reputation of Vekoma being a joke is slowly starting to go away, and people are starting to see all the work they're doing in Europe and realizing, oh, this isn't just the boomerang company. Like they can do some really cool stuff with their new designers and new technology. So in 2019, they would do Dragon Flyer for Dollywood, which is this one right here. They also did Phoenix at Dino's Wonder Wheel in 2021. And then they've got some really cool projects coming up, which if you're listening to this, Big Bear Mountain at Dollywood is now open, which will be the newest Vekoma.
Hopefully we'll get to ride it. Hopefully the lines aren't too bad.
I will make sure we write it. I got to get the credit. But this is probably Vekoma's most substantial non-Disney project in decades, I would say. I would have to go back and check just to make sure, but I mean, this Big Bear Mountain could change everything for Vekoma in the United States.
Right.
If it's as successful as people think it's going to be, this could be a really big deal for them, and we'll see. But the other two that are coming up, you got Ring Racer, which is a more of a family coaster that's opening at Six Flags St. Louis. But then the other big one that could really change things for Vekoma, as long as Coda Land gets their act together, is their very first tilt coaster opening at Coda Land in 2024. This one's called Circuit Breaker, which I've showed you. It's like this one where they come out on this piece of track, and then the track just tilts straight up and down, and then drops the train, and then it goes through the layout. It looks so good.
It's terrifying.
So if that Coda Land keeps, Coda Land's making me nervous because it's in is it Austin, Texas? It's where Coda Land is for Coda, which is the Circuit of the Americas racetrack. I'm pretty sure it's Austin.
Okay.
So I wanted to go to Coda Land next year, actually, to ride this, but I don't know. Coda Land's making me nervous because there's not a lot of updates happening with the park, and the Coda Land website actually just got taken down recently, so I'm like...
Oh, that's concerning.
It is concerning, especially because they've announced two really awesome-looking roller coasters. They have this one, and then Palindrome, which I know is actually under construction right now, so... I don't know what's going on with Coda Land. I don't know if they just bit off more than they can chew, but anyway, if Circuit Breaker happens, it's going to be towards the top of my bucket list for sure. So, but I guess the last thing I just want to say is I know a lot of enthusiasts give boomerangs a hard time, and they're not anything to talk about in nowadays, but I mean they certainly played a big part of the amusement industry in the 80s and 90s, and there's smaller parks that got off the ground because of their Vekoma Boomerang brought people to their parks back in the day, and so that's why you see parks like Worlds of Fun and Knott's Berry Farm that had them, is because back when it came out, like back when they first started constructing them, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal as much nowadays, but it still played a big part in the industry, and it's to this day. I would say it's probably the most popular model of roller coaster ever built. I just wanted to show you this. If you go to Google, so we're just going to do this really quick, and you can try this experiment for yourself at home if you want to. If you just go to Google and type in roller coaster, okay? That's not what I wanted. If you're just typing in roller coaster, and then go to images, how many of these are going to be Vekoma Boomerangs? Here's one right here. Here's another right here. There's two of them right off the bat. Here's another one right here. You just type in Vekoma or type in roller coaster, and three of them off the bat were Vekoma Boomerangs right here.
That's so funny.
And if I type in roller coaster, clip art, Vekoma Boomerang, second result.
That's hilarious. That's really funny.
Yeah, it's just such. So many people. Oh, here's another one right there. So I think
that one's on your ornament.
You know what? You're right. That is when my mom's sister made me an ornament to put on the Christmas tree, and I'm pretty sure that Vekoma Boomerang clip art right there is what they put on it. That's hilarious. So it's just it's such a popular coaster model that it's just in some people's minds, especially the GP. If you ask them to think roller coaster, that's probably what comes to mind for a lot of the GP.
Right.
Especially if it's something that was at their, one of the first roller coasters they ever went on, or if it's at a park that's their home park and they go there, so it's a big part of the industry, and that is the history of the Vekoma Boomerang.
Very nice.
So, if you enjoyed that episode, be sure to leave us a 5-star review.
5 stars.
Very appreciate it. So
5 stars, not 1 star. 5 stars.
I don't think you have anything else to add with Vekoma Boomerangs.
Go Vekoma.
Go Vekoma. I really would like to see Vekoma do some more in the U.S. Because I
want to see Vekoma Boomerang.
No, it's a Vekoma Boomerang.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I want to see Vekoma get some more work in the U.S. I mean, more coaster manufacturers just means more competition, which means more innovation, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, more competition is always good for us enthusiasts. So, keep at it, Vekoma. You're doing a good job.
Yeah, they are.
Well, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Airtime Traveler. Like I said, if you enjoyed that episode, be sure to go and leave a 5-star review on Spotify, wherever you might be listening. Helps people find us in the future and helps us keep making great stuff for you. So, and like I said, go and follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is just @Airtime Traveler. I don't know what our next episode's going to be on. I know, we obviously got a Dollywood trip report coming up, so be sure to check that out. Like I said, the day this episode releases, we will have been to Dollywood one day, and I'll be going to Dollywood another day. So, very excited for that. And got some trips to Worlds of Fun, Kentucky Kingdom, and Holiday World coming up soon, too. So, keep an eye out for those trip reports. And I think that's all I've got for today, unless the GP has anything else to add.
Nope.
Just looking forward to Vekoma Boomerang. And,
yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode, and we will see you in the next one.